Annyeonghaseyo. My name is Ron Green, and I'm the Trade Commissioner at the Australian Government's Trade and Investment Office here in Seoul. Today, I would like to introduce to you the Hydrogen Guarantee of Origin scheme that is currently under development by the Australian Government. However, firstly, by way of context, let me touch on the past. This year, Korea and Australia are celebrating 60 years of diplomatic ties. Over this time, Korea has become our fourth largest trading partner, and we are a major supplier of coal and gas that keeps Korea's industry going, and the iron ore goes into POSCO and Hyundai Steel. Of course, you know about our wine and meat as well, and I think you can see that we are a great partner for Korea in trade and, of course, investment. To the future, it is Australia's lithium, nickel and cobalt that is going to go into the batteries that power the Hyundai electric vehicles. By 2030, it will be Australia's hydrogen that will replace the hydrocarbons that the industry and transport sectors rely on. So we're going to be helping Korea get to net zero by 2050, and hydrogen is going to be an essential element of that. That is why the Guarantee of Origin scheme that I'm introducing to you today, while conceptual, is going to be a very important part of the relationship we have with Korea and between Korea and Australia. So why Australia for hydrogen? With our abundant land, solar and wind resources, it is predicted that Australia will become a major supplier of hydrogen to Korea. This was predicted in our National Hydrogen Strategy, which was launched in November 2019. Our hydrogen strategy included 57 actions. The development of the GO scheme, Guarantee of Origin scheme, is one of the key actions and an early priority. But noting that the development of the GO scheme should not delay our investment in hydrogen production and eventual supply of hydrogen. Essentially, the GO scheme determines the carbon footprint of hydrogen production and ensures that the consumers understand the environmental impact of the hydrogen they are purchasing and using. That is to say, all hydrogen is not equal. The quality of it is determined by the carbon footprint of the hydrogen that is produced. It is expected that the methodology developed here will form the inputs to future international standards and have broad acceptance across export markets. The approach builds on the European certified system, which was developed by the European industry stakeholders in 2014 and has been piloted in 2019. A Guarantee of Origin scheme will support hydrogen being traded as an international commodity, which Australia hopes to become a major exporter. It is important that the GO scheme adopted by different countries seeking to trade hydrogen is transparent, consistent, promotes choice by consumers through access to information, and takes into account the CO2 emitted by different pathways to produce hydrogen. The scheme needs to be able to evolve over time to allow for different hydrogen production, storage and transport methods, and also production of products from hydrogen, such as green steel, electricity, or ammonia. The Australian Government is working on this scheme as a member of the International Partnership of Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in the Economy, IPHE, with the aim of developing a mutually agreed methodology to determine the carbon emissions associated with hydrogen production. IPHE is an international government-to-government partnership whose goal is to promote the advancement of hydrogen industry standards and protocols that will underpin future trade and investment. IPHE has 22 member countries, including the European countries, US, England, and Korea. IPH members are aligned in that the GO scheme should include all technologies to produce clean hydrogen. However, a method for calculating the greenhouse gas emissions of each production method should be determined before it is included in the scheme. Short term, the priority is to develop the methods for coal gasification with CCS, steam methane reforming with CCS, electrolysis, and byproduct production of hydrogen, which is the main source of hydrogen today in Korea. Following the consultation phase, which was completed in July 2021, there will be a trial phase of the 3 production pathways of electrolysis, coal gasification, and steam reforming, allowing the methodologies to be compared and further refined. These trials will happen in the second half of 2021 and identify priority areas for further expansion of the initial scheme. The Australian government commissioned the consulting company Energetics to provide scheme design options and recommended 3 options for which developing the scheme that was IPH aligned, but also a domestic scheme that could transition to an international scheme was in our best interest. Should this option fail, other options would be considered, including engaging with countries to develop a domestic scheme that was internationally aligned for export markets. So we could have a one-to-one scheme with Korea in the future, should the approach that we are adopting today not prove as progressive as we had hoped. The boundary of the GO scheme refers to the limits in the hydrogen value chain which emissions are to be measured. If the boundaries are consistent, emissions for different hydrogen production methods can be compared. The boundary initially did not take into account the emissions of products such as green steel or ammonia, but the scheme should be developed with this in mind. While the broadest boundary is the cradle to grave or the full life cycle emissions of the production of 1 unit of hydrogen. This approach is complex and compromises will arise in accuracy. Stakeholders consulted in the development of the GO scheme recommended that the boundary of the scheme should be cradle to gate, which is consistent with the certified system and covers all upstream emissions, such as supply of LNG and emissions associated with the production of hydrogen, but excludes emissions associated with hydrogen transport and consumption. So cradle to gate is the starting point of the GO system. Over time, the full emission picture for delivery of the hydrogen to the consumer will, however, be required for full transparency. An early step is to include the conversion to energy carriers such as ammonia or methylcyclohexane, and this work has commenced, and a discussion paper on this will be released soon. Expansion to include downstream products, as discussed, is also going to be required. Offsets are generated by projects that reduce or remove emissions. Examples include offsets generated by reforestation or carbon capture and storage. There is a consensus that emissions generated by steam methane reforming or coal gasification production of hydrogen needs to be considered, but the level of emissions has yet to be set at an international standard. A deduction in emissions can occur, however, when CCS occurs at the hydrogen production site. An alternative approach is to reflect both gross and net emissions, which reflect the benefit of carbon credits. This would create further demand for carbon credit units and an increase in carbon credit unit prices. This is not consistent with international standards, however, at this point in time. The regulatory framework for the development of this scheme. A certificate scheme will be required to verify and track the emissions of hydrogen. This will allow for trading systems in the certificates. The information on a hydrogen certificate will include emissions, the location of the production facility, production technology, primary fuel sources, and the registration of these certificates online. So to the next steps. Currently, we are consolidating feedback on the framework of the GO scheme, and we are then going to use this feedback to develop a new approach to the trials. The trials will test methodologies for each production pathway and ensure all material emission sources can be identified and accounted for. We'll verify the process, assess the regulatory burden of administering these processes, test different approaches to allocation of the emission burden, and to determine the appropriate reporting period for which this scheme should apply. So today I've introduced to you the Guarantee of Origin scheme. It's by very early stages in terms of developing the structure around this scheme, and it's important that we seek your feedback if you have any, and do not hesitate to contact me on the email provided here. I'm happy to provide your feedback to the Australian government people developing this system, and I do look forward to continuing to work with Korea, not only in the development of this scheme, but also in helping Korea transition to a hydrogen future. Thank you very much for your time today.
안녕하세요. My name is Michael Newman. I am the Senior Trade and Investment Commissioner for North Asia. Before I discuss the New South Wales Hydrogen Vision, I would just like to give a very brief update about our presence in North Asia, and to let you know, for the Korean market, we will be doubling our headcount, and I look forward to meeting all of you in person when such times permit. Without any further ado, let me talk about the New South Wales Hydrogen Vision. The market opportunities in New South Wales are quite large, and I am hoping in the very near future to announce our official hydrogen strategy, which should be released in November. But between now and then, I'm also hoping to be arranging some webinars where I can get you in front of Port Kembla, the Port of Newcastle, as well as discussing critical minerals. First, starting off with the heavy transport market in New South Wales. Please understand that the New South Wales government bus fleet is the largest among any of the states in Australia, with a total fleet of 8,000 buses. The objective by 2030 is to have 20% of those fuel cell powered. That's some 1,200 buses. And we believe that there's 5,000 to 7,000 tonnes of hydrogen per annum with a 35 to 50 megawatt electrolyser capacity. Moving to the next slide, of course, industrial ammonia and steel is another big part of our strategy in hydrogen and ammonia. Ammonia production in Newcastle will be 250,000 tonnes per annum, with 40,000 tonnes of hydrogen using a 230 megawatt electrolyser capacity. Steel production at Port Kembla will also be very reliant on green energy. It produces 5 to 6 million tonnes of steel per annum, and it also produces 430,000 tonnes of hydrogen via a 2.3 gigawatt electrolyser capacity. New South Wales gas production, consumption rather, is around 130 petajoules per annum, and with 10% blending target, that will require some 36,000 tonnes of hydrogen with a 230 megawatt electrolyser capacity. Note that Tallawarra B in Port Kembla, Australia's first dual capacity hydrogen gas plant, will be in operation. Briefly touching on Investment New South Wales and our attempts to get clean tech investment attraction to investors in Korea and corporates in Korea. Note that the state is very much committed to driving investment, responding to business needs, helping Australia business scale up and go global, be a single point of accountability, and to put New South Wales on the world stage. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, why we are doubling our commitment to the Korean market. While today's conversation will largely be around the clean economy and hydrogen and renewables, please note that the areas of health, technology, advanced manufacturing, agri-food, education and the visitor economy are also key areas where the New South Wales government is committing resources. But how can we assist you? We can do that by a variety of attraction services, by providing market intelligence and investment opportunities, support for business case development, identification of investment locations and partners, familiarisation visits, advice on government programs and approvals, access to senior executives across government, industry and academic institutions, as well as providing incentives. If I go back to the earlier conversation around hydrogen opportunities in New South Wales, the domestic opportunities alone provide some very interesting areas. First of all, as mentioned earlier, Transport for New South Wales has a zero emission bus initiative by 2030 to get 8,300 buses converted to fuel cell power. We also see maritime applications. We see aerospace, fuel cell drivetrains for commercial trucks, fuel cell integration capabilities, hydrogen refueling equipment, as well as electrolyzers. We should also point out that New South Wales is conducting Australia's first zero emissions heavy road transport trial. In the first half of 2022, with two Hyzon Himax 450 prime movers with a 650 kilometre range, we are looking at similar refueling time to equivalent diesel vehicles. Vehicles will be deployed by Corgas as part of their New South Wales distribution fleet and operate between Port Kembla and Sydney, averaging around 400 kilometres a day. Heavy road transport is clearly a major carbon emitting sector, and this trial will showcase hydrogen fuel cell technology which is zero emission at point of use. Why are we doing this? Well, the trial will provide important key data and metrics for Australian heavy road transport fleet operators to assist industry transition to that zero emissions future which New South Wales government is committed to. And in order to support this initiative, we are providing the construction of a $2 million hydrogen refueling station at the Corgas Port Kembla site, assisted by $500,000 in New South Wales government grants. Of course, the New South Wales energy system is in transition. Our current infrastructure took 30 years to build, but we need to replace it in less than 15 years. And in order to do that, we have to do it quickly and efficiently to prevent New South Wales consumers and residents from facing far higher electricity prices. Naturally, hydrogen will also present us with quite a lot of export opportunities. New South Wales renewable energy zones will support large-scale solar and wind electricity generation, which will be well suited to supporting future hydrogen production. For example, the New England renewable energy zone up to 8,000 megawatts of generation and storage. Potential export ports at Newcastle and Port Kembla are supported by not only strong high voltage transmission infrastructure and existing industrial capabilities, but two of the deepest water ports in Australia. New South Wales also has competitive advantages in the hydrogen space. Firstly, we have access to cheap and abundant clean energy resources. Second, we have large potential domestic consumption. Third, we have efficient planning pathways that maintain best practice safety assessments. 4, we have funding support for hydrogen infrastructure and technology. And 5, we not only have a heavy and advanced manufacturing base, we have existing commercial hydrogen production, existing export terminals and trade, and a very good track record of safety. 6, we have sustainable water resources. 7, we have world-class research and development. And 8, we have geosequestration potential as well. I think it is also worth pointing out that we also have a very highly skilled workforce that has been in the industry for many decades, and we believe that during the transition they will be a critical part for any investment coming into New South Wales. So what is New South Wales government hydrogen policy? New South Wales government is committed to providing support for hydrogen. As mentioned in the early part of this speech, in November we will be having the official New South Wales government hydrogen strategy put forward. For the moment, you can see these documents which are available on our website of the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment to understand our net zero plan, our electricity infrastructure roadmap, opportunities for prosperity in a decarbonised and resilient New South Wales, looking at New South Wales as a clean energy superpower, and turning our state into a net zero industry and innovation leader. The journey to maturity for hydrogen in New South Wales will come in 3 phases. Firstly, between 2020 and 2025, we will show the complete demonstration of technology and establish the foundation for future scaling. In the second phase, from 2025 to 2030, we will try to drive large-scale industry growth. And the third phase, from 2030 and beyond, we'll look at facilitating widespread commercial uptake. Our hydrogen framework will look to progress actions for each sector during phase 1. And the initial initiative will focus on funding on heavy transport and industrial projects to create new demand for hydrogen in the transport market and catalyse growth of the clean hydrogen industry in New South Wales. In order to do that, New South Wales Net Zero Industry and Innovation Program will be a $750 million commitment by the New South Wales Government to accelerate clean technology development and decarbonisation efforts across our high-emitting industries. We will have $380 million to deploy low emissions technologies and infrastructure, $195 million to support the development and continued innovation of emerging clean technologies, as well as $175 million to lay the foundations for low emission industries, including at least $70 million for hydrogen hub development. When looking at our hydrogen hub development initiative concept, as mentioned, we're committing at least $70 million to develop hydrogen hubs as part of the Net Zero Industry and Innovation Program. Grant funding can be applied to any project cost to make it commercially viable, and this includes equipment or assets necessary for the distribution and consumption of hydrogen, e.g. plant upgrades, hydrogen, refueling stations and vehicles. We are also considering how this initiative aims can be support the broader rollout of refueling stations at and along strategic logistics corridors. The New South Wales Government plans to help connect potential hydrogen users and hydrogen hub project proponents. We're also developing a collaboration platform, which will be a digital platform to drive collaboration on hydrogen in New South Wales and facilitate connections between deployment projects and hydrogen consumers. Invites will be sent out to join the platform in coming weeks. In terms of timeframes, as mentioned at the start of our presentation, the release of the New South Wales Hydrogen Strategy is expected in November of 2021. We are hoping to have applications open in November and to close by January 2022, with detailed applications open in March 2022, with a close in June 2022. Then project assessment and grant awarding expected by the third quarter of 2022, with hub implementation expected to start by the first quarter of 2023. I'd like to thank you for your time in listening to today's presentation. If you do have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact myself, Michael Newman, Senior Trade Investment Commissioner for North Asia, or Eugene Kim, who is our New South Wales Trade and Investment Commissioner to Seoul. Once again, thank you for your attention today. I look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.
Before starting my presentation, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I'm giving my presentation today and pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mucsi. I'm the Business Development Manager for Fuels and Hydrogen in the Department for Trade and Investment of the South Australian Government. I'm delighted to be involved today, and my main aim is to share what South Australia is doing to advance clean hydrogen and build relationships with industry, association, academia, and other government. My presentation will be shared now. My home state of South Australia is considered a global leader in clean energy transformation and has a vision to become an exporter of clean energy to global market. But before going into details, what project we are doing in South Australia and what plans and opportunities we can offer for you, let me give you some very important message from our state. We believe that we can secure a cleaner yet still reliable energy future by using renewable carbon neutral gas such as hydrogen. The South Australian Government vision is to have multiple export-grade hydrogen production facilities with broad range of carriers, including gaseous hydrogen, liquefied hydrogen, ammonia, MCH, and other liquid organic hydrogen carriers. As a state, we are fortunate world-class wind and solar resources, but this is only one of the reasons why big conglomerates and companies choose South Australia to invest in. South Australia has the land, the infrastructure to build your project on. Our regulatory environment are simple and efficient and helps building community and investor confidence. South Australia has a highly competitive, low-tax environment that provides economic development and support investment. And this is completed by low labor cost and skilled workforce. Our community support for a cleaner project is extremely strong. To this slide, we put the key things we are proud of. So we're proud of one of the highest penetration of variable renewable electricity generation in the world, with well over 60% renewable electricity generation in 2020, supplied by wind and solar PV. We have one of the highest uptake of solar PV in the world. The world original most famous big battery has been expanded recently by 50% to 150 megawatt. We have one of the most distributed energy system in the world, with 1 in 3 homes and 1 in 3 businesses with solar PV, and with over 1 kilowatt installed per capita uptake of home batteries in the world. Home batteries, we have more than 12,000 home battery installed as a part of the virtual power plant scheme. We have the Australia currently largest electrolyzer, the 1.25 megawatt electrolyzer, which is supplying around 700 homes with renewable hydrogen blended with natural gas, as well as industrial users and neighbor states. And one of the 13 regional hydrogen technology clusters established under the National Energy Resources Australia. South Australia has the hydrogen technology cluster. But I also can tell you that we are not a home to any nuclear, large-scale hydro or coal-fired power. A quick overview on South Australia's hydrogen journey. We started the hydrogen journey in 2017 when we issued the Green Hydrogen Study. And based on this study, we did the first document, the hydrogen roadmap for South Australia in 2017. In 2019, from the roadmap, we issued the South Australia's Hydrogen Action Plan with 5 action areas and more than 20 actions. In 2020, we launched the Hydrogen Export Modeling Tool. This is an IT-based tool, free, accessible, and the prospectus where you can find the key findings from the feasibility study. I'm going to give you some details on the ongoing hydrogen project in South Australia. So as I just said before, the Adelaide-based Australian Gas Network, AGIG, and a part of the Australian Gas Infrastructure Group owns gas distribution assets across Australia, including South Australia. The Hydrogen Park SA project is up and running since May 2021, includes the electrolyzer I mentioned earlier, which is currently the largest in Australia. This is a 1.25 megawatt PEM electrolyzer. The plant capacity is 20 kilo hydrogen per hour, which allows 5% per volume blend into AGIG's gas network and supplied around 700 homes and deliver in users in the state via truck. The South Australian government has supported AGN to develop this $14.5 million hydrogen demonstration project at the Tonsley Innovation District with a $4.9 million grant. Tonsley is a former Mitsubishi motor car factory site 10 kilometers south of Adelaide CBD. This opportunity offers hydrogen offtake contract for you. Please feel free to visit the company website or contact me to make the introduction. The next project I'd like to give you an overview is H2U Air Peninsula Gateway project. Hydrogen Utility is a specialist developer of hydrogen infrastructure solutions. The South Australian government is also very pleased to be supporting this company and its planned $240 million Air Peninsula Gateway project with a $4.7 million grant and a $7.5 million loan. This is a commercial scale green ammonia demonstration project located near Waihala in the Upper Spencer Gulf. Last year was announced that Mitsubishi Heavy Industry has taken an equity share in H2U in order to develop this project. The project is in the front-end engineering design phase, which is an exciting milestone, and it represents a multi-million-dollar commitment by H2U and its investors to take this project into the construction phase. The project is targeting 100 megawatt of electrolyzer to produce around 40,000 tonnes per annum of green ammonia to service domestic users in Australia. This would be the largest green ammonia project in the world. However, H2U aspires to expand this project 24 times to 1.5 gigawatt of electrolyzer and 800,000 tons per annum of green ammonia. There are investment opportunities into this project, both the demonstrator stage and also for the export expansion stage, for offtake for supply agreements for green hydrogen, ammonia, and as well offtake finance. The next project I'm going to talk about is Newman Christabrook project. Newman is an independent power producer specializing in renewable energy projects across multiple technologies, including solar, wind, and storage. The company operates the big Tesla battery in Hornsdale, what I just mentioned in my at the beginning of my presentation, which was extended by 50% last year. In March 2018, Newman Australia commenced a feasibility study supported by the South Australian government to investigate the technical and economic feasibility of co-locating a hydrogen production facility with Newman's permitted Christabrook Energy Park site. The site would be capable of producing up to 25 tons of hydrogen per day, and the key findings of the feasibility study has been recently released to the public, so I encourage everyone to read it through. Newman is also considering opportunities for larger scale production for export supplied nearby the Goyder renewable energy zones. Newman is continuing to work closely with local, national and international government and stakeholders to secure off-takers for the hydrogen that would be produced in South Australia. The next project I'm going to talk about is the Santos Mumba CCS project, which is now well in the public domain and attracts a lot of attention. So the carbon capture and storage is a critical enabler for zero-emission hydrogen. Santos has a natural competitive advantage in delivering zero-emission hydrogen from the Cooper Basin. The Moomba carbon capture and storage project is the second largest such project globally, with the lowest cost of less than 30 Australian dollar per tonne over the life cycle, and the pathway to further lowering cost. This project is final investment decision ready, subject to Australian carbon credit unit eligibility. With a CO2 injection trial to prove injectivity, as well the front-end engineering design now complete, together with internal assurance, cost reviews, so it's a well-advanced stage project. Santos and its project partner, Beach Energy, has been awarded with a 15 million grant from the Australian Government Carbon Capture, Use and Storage Development Fund. The project offers opportunity for long-term offtake and supply agreements for zero-emission hydrogen. The next thing I like to talk about is the Port Bonython and Whyalla Export Hub. A big focus for the South Australian Government in the energy and resources sector is driving the development of hydrogen export supply chain in South Australia, obviously. The South Australian Government has consulted widely with key international hydrogen stakeholders to understand really the barriers to investment in hydrogen infrastructure. The Australian Government announced the funding for Hydrogen Hub. The initial funding was $7.2 million, and in April announced a further $275 million for developing additional hydrogen hubs. Whyalla in the Upper Spencer Gulf area was called as a potential location. The Hydrogen Export Hub Fund could be even broader than hydrogen production. It could incorporate industrial hubs, which include port facilities and specific type of businesses with export targets. This really builds on Australia's National Hydrogen Strategy, which was released in 2019. In May 2021, we opened an expression of interest from national and international companies to develop land at Port Bonython in the Upper Spencer Gulf. Submissions are currently being reviewed, and hopefully the result will be released very soon. The next project I'd like to talk about is not in the Upper Spencer Gulf area, but really important to mention and introduce to you because it has a lot of opportunities. Summerfield Hybrid Power Station is an 1,100 hectare development by Sepchan. 2,700 acre site nestled in between two gas pipelines and intersects the 275 kV Electronet high voltage power lines. The construction ready phase 1 consists 380 megawatt fast start combined cycle gas turbines. It's ready for hydrogen blending, 30 megawatt battery energy storage system, and 12 megawatt of solar. The new construction ready phase 2 consists of up to 600 megawatt of solar and 240 megawatt battery energy storage system. Phase 3 is about future prospect of up to 1 gigawatt of hydrogen production. The electrical transmission allows electrical distribution and supplies up to 1,200 megawatt to and from to the Summerfield Hybrid Power Station. The gas pipeline allows distribution through regional South Australian Adelaide, gas supply via the sea gas pipeline from southeastern Victoria. And right now, Subgen are looking for investment, supply, distribution, contract, or outright sale of the project. These were the projects I really wanted to mention and introduce to you. The next couple of slides will be about collaboration opportunities. The first slide comes up with HIT CRC and Hydrogen CRC. CRC means Corporate Research Centres. Corporate Research Centres are an Australian federal government program and are key bodies for Australian scientific research. CRCs are user-driven cooperative public-private research centres which really achieve high level of outcomes in adoption and commercialization. South Australia's local research and development capabilities are world-class, applicable to a broad range of hydrogen-related research, development, commercialization challenges, and attracting strong interest from engagement from all industry. The Heavy Industry Low Carbon Transition CRC, led by University of Adelaide, and it has three main goals: to accelerate carbon footprint reduction, to develop and demonstrate novel technologies, and identify pathway for industry transformation. The HEART CRC has been approved and been awarded with 39 million in cash support over 10 years from the Australian government. Beyond that, more than 45 million in cash and more than 130 million in kind support committed by partners across from Australia, Japan, Korea, and many more countries. But there's still room for joining. The next CRC I'd like to introduce is the Hydrogen CRC. This CRC is about hydrogen generation, utilization, and storage. Export angle is included by examining and investigating the carrier opportunities. It aims to bring key stakeholders together from industry, including OEMs and academia, but also support hydrogen equipment and technology services to develop education and training programs. The CRC prospectus has been released. Please visit the CRC website or just contact me and I can introduce you to the CRC researchers. I truly believe, both for the CRC, today is the best time to join to these initiatives. At the beginning of my presentation, I talked about that we are a home of one of the 13 clusters funded by NERA. NERA is a National Energy Resources Australia, and the South Australian Hydrogen Technology Cluster is the South Australian base of hydrogen technology collaboration and supply chain innovation. The cluster has very clear targets. By 2025, establishing hydrogen hubs. Beyond 2025, build domestic scale, connecting regional markets, hubs, support key infrastructure investment, establishing manufacturing and training base. And beyond 2030, it's really support the export scale, upscale supply chain skills, export scale manufacturing industries, and of course, globally focused multi-sector investment. You can join this cluster if you want to complement future low emissions, if you wish to position supply chains aligned to your key hydrogen technologies, if you are interested in building market scale via links with other hydrogen project channels, or if you are just desire increased national or international brand recognition as a cluster member. The next page, I would like to talk about the ICN Gateway. The ICN is a network of experienced industry procurement and supply chain specialists who introduce businesses large and small projects, large and small, across Australia and New Zealand. Their database consists of approximately 70,000 companies with detailed profile, and there are billions of dollars in projects seeking expression of interest. The South Australian ICN team, Industry Capability Network team, sits within the Department for Trade and Investment I'm representing today, which allows us to facilitate meetings, make introduction for you with local capabilities. Just with one word, broaden your local network. This is the end of my presentations and hopefully the beginning of our further discussion. Reaching out is very easy, as the Department for Trade and Investment has presence in Seoul, in Tokyo, many other countries, and of course in Adelaide. Please feel free to contact Ms. Sally Townsend. She is the SA Commissioner. She located in Tokyo and well across not only the minerals and energy sector of South Australia, but with the other 8 sectors too. I encourage you to contact me anytime, even with just seeking an answer to your one question. My presentation will be publicly available. Please feel free to download. You can fill my contact details and you can easily reach me out. Thank you again for the opportunity to be a part of this event. I truly appreciate everyone's time and effort for this session. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Caroline Cherry, Executive Director of the Infrastructure Planning and Economic Development Division, representing the Government of Western Australia. It is my pleasure to speak to you about Western Australia's renewable hydrogen strategy and recent developments in our growing hydrogen industry. In July 2019, the Western Australian Government released the Renewable Hydrogen Strategy. The vision of the strategy is for Western Australia to become a significant producer, user, and exporter of renewable hydrogen. The strategy identifies 4 strategic focus areas as priority areas for government and industry in our context. These are export, remote applications, hydrogen blending in natural gas networks, and transport. The strategy outlines 8 goals, 4 to be achieved by 2022 and 4 to be achieved by 2030. These are, for 2022, a project to export hydrogen is approved. Hydrogen is being used in one remote location in Western Australia. Hydrogen is distributed in a Western Australian gas network, and a refueling facility for hydrogen vehicles is available. Our 2030 goals are that Western Australia's market share in hydrogen is similar to its market share in LNG. Our gas pipelines and networks contain up to 10% blend of hydrogen, that it is being widely used in mining haulage vehicles, and it is a significant fuel source for transport in regional areas. Western Australia has a number of natural advantages that makes it an attractive place for renewable hydrogen production and use. We have vast areas of land. At 2.5 million square kilometres, our state is just over 25 times the size of Korea. Much of this land also happens to be co-located in some of the sunniest and windiest parts of the world and near key complementary infrastructure and resources. For example, the Pilbara region in the northwest of the state averages more than 10 hours a day of sunshine and is officially the sunniest region in Australia. The Pilbara is also home to much of Australia's mining and oil and gas industries, with supporting infrastructure such as the Port of Dampier bulk liquid berth. We see real opportunities for the development of a hydrogen hub in this region that would include the potential for green steel. Other locations in Western Australia have up to 50% wind capacity factors. Much of our great wind potential lies in the coastal regions of Western and Southwestern Australia, with wind speeds above 7.5 metres per second. Western Australia is also fortunate as our good wind resources also extend hundreds of kilometres inland. For instance, the Midwest and Gascoyne regions, where you will find many of our wind farms, both current and planned. We are also home to some well-established infrastructure connections, including world-class ports. Ports such as Port Hedland, Ashburton and Dampier are well-known and reliable logistics hubs for the shipping of vast amounts of iron ore, LNG and other commodities globally. Being located relatively close to Asia means our shipping distance to Korea at its closest is around 3,650 nautical miles, or about 8 days travel. We feel these established routes will support and accelerate the growth of our hydrogen export vision. Western Australia also has the key skills and expertise in building new large-scale industry, notably the LNG export industry and the renewable energy sector. Western Australia is now the world's second largest exporter of LNG, accounting for more than 13% share of global exports. Arriving at this position took decades of committing to a vision, learning from experience, and a willingness of industry and government to work together and leveraging the connection between domestic and export opportunities. This expertise is now being applied to growing Western Australia's hydrogen sector and future hydrogen hubs in our regions. This map of our state shows the number of proposals and projects we are currently aware of in Western Australia. These are covering the entire renewable hydrogen supply chain. A number of these proposals and projects were successful recipients of the Western Australian Renewable Hydrogen Fund and have received government grant funding. Reports on these projects and proposals are available on the wa.gov.au website. I'd like to now take the opportunity to quickly cover 3 significant hydrogen projects here in Western Australia. The Asian Renewable Energy Hub. This is located in the East Pilbara between Port Hedland and Broome. This project received environmental approvals for its first stage of 15 gigawatts last year, and it is currently working with the Commonwealth and state governments to upgrade this to a 26 gigawatt project. At around 6,500 square kilometres, this project has generated a significant amount of interest from major international companies and investors and has lead agency status with the state government. In July this year, the team behind the project announced another exciting large-scale renewable hydrogen proposal known as the Western Green Energy Hub in the southeast of Western Australia. This new proposal aims for an energy capacity of up to 50 gigawatts of upstream wind and solar. We look forward to the development of this mega energy proposal and the opportunities that it will generate to the local community and as part of the international hydrogen value chain. Yarra Pilbara and Engie's Uri Green Ammonia project. This is a 10 megawatt electrolyser and on-site solar PV at Yarra Pilbara Fertilisers' existing ammonia facility in the Pilbara. The project has received a significant boost from the Commonwealth Government's Renewable Hydrogen Deployment Funding Round of $42.5 million. This is in addition to $2 million grant from the first round of the Western Australian Renewable Hydrogen Fund. The facility will be one of the world's first industrial-scale renewable hydrogen production operations. Completion of the Uri project is expected in 2023, pending a final investment decision towards the end of this year or early next year. The Clean Energy Innovation Park is another successful recipient from the Commonwealth's Renewable Hydrogen Deployment Funding Round. It received a grant of $28.7 million. The project, which is co-located with the 180 megawatt Warradaji wind farm in the Midwest region. The project involves a 10 megawatt electrolyser which will generate up to 4.3 tonnes of hydrogen per day. A final investment decision is anticipated in early 2022, with commissioning commencing in 2023. This project also received a grant through round 1 of the Western Australian Renewable Hydrogen Fund for a feasibility study. The results of this study are available on the wa.gov.au website. Our government has made some significant investments into growing the industry. We have run 2 rounds of the Western Australia Renewable Hydrogen Fund, with the first round awarding up to $10 million of funding to 7 feasibility studies and 4 capital works projects, all of which are underway. The second round of the Renewable Hydrogen Fund will see up to $5 million available to renewable hydrogen feasibility studies and capital works projects. We have assessed the submitted applications and announced the successful capital works project as ATCO Gas Australia's hydrogen blending project to decarbonise the Western Australian gas distribution network. This project will supply up to 2,500 customers in the first instance and assist the government in meeting its 2022 goal to blend hydrogen into the distribution network. This project, in the first instance, will be the largest of its kind in Australia. An announcement of the successful feasibility studies from round 2 of our fund will be made in the next few weeks. $3 million has been committed to a legal framework review involving extensive regulatory work to tackle barriers and gaps that exist, providing clarity to increase investor confidence and also business operating environment. $2.7 million has assisted with expanding the renewable hydrogen unit here in the department to support this rapidly emerging industry. $1 million has been provided towards identifying suitable locations for the geological storage of hydrogen. This will allow us to investigate potential hydrogen storage locations with an aim to reduce costs and allow for scalability of projects, particularly those with export ambitions. $1 million towards developing a detailed hydrogen value chain model, which will allow us to understand domestic demand locations, and the potential for demand aggregation. It will also allow government to understand any impediments to the development of the industry and identify potential policy levers to help alleviate these impediments. It will also provide an understanding of any infrastructure bottlenecks and also to determine those funding models, whether there is government investment, private investment, or co-investment. $600,000 has been put to a study on blending hydrogen in the Western Australian gas network. This is to allow the consideration of the technical, economic and regulatory impacts of blending hydrogen into the gas distribution network. In 2020, the Western Australian Government progressed a call for expressions of interest to develop a renewable hydrogen precinct within the Oakajee Strategic Industrial Area, 20 kilometres north of Geraldton in the Midwest region. 65 expressions of interest were received from organisations across the world, and the government has commenced the activation process by committing $7.5 million to construct a central access road at Oakajee. We are also now preparing an Oakajee hydrogen activation plan to support the development of the renewable hydrogen precinct and establish other components of a hydrogen supply chain. All our government activities and initiatives are available through the Renewable Hydrogen Roadmap, which builds on our renewable hydrogen strategy by outlining how the Western Australian Government will realise its vision and goals. We are currently progressing 26 initiatives in the roadmap, with a revision currently underway to capture all of the developments that have occurred since last year. The updated roadmap will be released in the next few months. As you can see, Western Australia's renewable hydrogen ambitions are grounded in our abundant natural advantages, capabilities gained through our hugely successful mining and LNG industries, and strong commitment from our state government. We believe that through continued support, investment, and collaboration with our key international partners, particularly the Republic of Korea, Western Australia will become a strategic hydrogen hub supplying the world. Thank you.